Welcome back to the Gardening with Joe and Holly radio show. Happy to have you along today. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Darrell Frey has been a permaculture consultant and teacher since 1987. He is a lifelong learner with a strong background in horticulture, natural sciences, regenerative systems, and permaculture design. He has an extensive practical experience in small business management, homesteading, construction, and project management. Welcome to the program, Darrell.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your day, not only to educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners. And I'll start with this. People may not be familiar with the term permaculture. What is permaculture in the simplest form?
Well, the most simply stated, permaculture is a system of ecological design.
There you go. And it's permaculture can be utilized in creating something and then adding to it, or creating something and walking away and letting nature take over from that. Could that be as well?
Well, yeah, that can be a goal. Setting up little ecosystems. A lot of permaculture, being a design system, there's a lot of upfront planning, study, research, and then, but like with any gardening system, the more you maintain it, the better, more productive it is.
Right.
So what would be like an example, if somebody has a backyard vegetable garden, would that be considered permaculture? Would it go deeper than that?
Yeah, the originator of permaculture, Bill Mollison, he said it's not necessarily how you garden, it's where you locate your garden relative to your house. And so, we might suggest someone have a kitchen garden close to their back door, and their more productive vegetable garden a little further away, and then their fruit trees at the back end of their yard. So it's a lot about how you lay out your property to begin with, to make the most efficient use of your time and energy and resources.
Okay. So speaking of, you mentioned fruit trees, food forests, what are they and how can they benefit those around them?
Yeah, food forests are really an ancient technique. In our food forest handbook I co-authored, the first chapter discusses food forests around the world, and really Native people, indigenous cultures, and even European societies planted a lot of perennials, mimicking nature, stacking plants together to be more productive. For example, if you have an apple tree, you certainly can grow some herbs, flowers, and even vegetables around the drip edge. So food forest is basically combining perennials to get the most out of the space.
So there's a little bit of planning that has to go into that, because obviously if you got your tree, you kind of got to plan ahead of where the maximum growth of it will be in order to put that the plants underneath the drip line.
Correct. On one of the little food forest systems at my farm, we grew a lot of annuals while the main apple tree was growing. Also, a lot of perennial herbs, and then as the tree got bigger and shady spots, we put plants that liked shade. So just like in an ecosystem, there's kind of a succession of plants that evolve, and all with the eye towards getting the most production out of the space.
Excellent. So if somebody wants to join a community garden, what are some things they should consider first before they start, looking for a plot?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in Pittsburgh, and I'm involved in a lot of community gardens, and a big part of it is the actual community. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, there's an organization called Grow Pittsburgh, and they help get community gardens started. So they find a group of people that want to have a community garden, and they help them come up with, maybe some bylaws, maybe a treasurer, help them procure funding for fencing. So the most important part of community gardening is that community of people that are willing to work together, because they all want some garden space.
Well, when we talk about community gardens, we see the good things online, are there certain questions if I'm looking to go be part of a community garden? Are there certain things that I should be asking right away? And is there certain things that if I hear, I need to go elsewhere?
Well, for instance, in my community garden space this year, a groundhog got in. And I think there was a slow period between, in your home garden, if you have home garden space, you can probably deal with that kind of thing right away.
Right.
So in a community garden, you want to make sure that there are people who are willing to take care of those kind of things quickly, and even have agreements on how you deal with the groundhog getting into your garden. So yeah, I would meet with the people and know that everyone's taking care of their own plots, and if somebody has an aphid outbreak, maybe they'll spray some soap on it. You just want to know that everyone's good neighbors in the garden. The community garden I'm involved with, a portion of the produce is donated back every week to a local food bank, so that helps make for a nice community, and so it's a fun group of people, and everyone seems to get along.
And I guess that in a community garden, if there is a bad apple, let's label that, they won't be around too long. They will go on their way whenever they feel pressure, or there'll be enough people that complain that will cause them to leave, and then you can have more of a unity of a community garden.
Yeah, I haven't ran into any problems, but I can see that could happen. And it's the community garden I'm involved with, they've also had some not weekly, but a couple meetings a month and some events at the end of the year to build community. So, and then people are willing to share their produce, which is another good part of a community garden. You might only get a 2-foot by 12-foot space, but your neighbor has peppers and you have tomatoes, and we have community plots of herbs, so everybody can take from the perennial herb plots. So it's been really an enjoyable experience for me.
And you bring up the size. There's not a universal all community plots are this size. So if you're looking for a specific size, you'll have to shop around. But like you said, I trade with you, you trade with me. We get both what we want. It's the barter system. They can't tax the barter system.
Right, yeah.
So there's many different methods of composting. There's hot composting, passive composting, cool composting. Do you have a preference of composting method, and what is it and why?
Yeah, I was an organic farmer for 25 years. We sold produce to restaurants, so we always had to do hot composting for our vegetable production, just to sell it, especially if you're using animal manures. Using in an urban environment, I definitely strongly believe that it needs to be contained. So your kitchen scraps have to be in a container that isn't going to attract rodents. And that doesn't necessarily heat up if you don't manage it, with the right carbon nitrogen available. So I think whatever method you can use, as long as your organic matter is broken down. But if you're worried about any pathogens coming through or diseases, it doesn't hurt to keep your grass clippings, and before you put the compost from your compost bin into the garden, to compost it for a few extra days with a lot of heat. Just make sure it's safe to use. But the old organic gardening magazines, Ruth Stout used to just tuck her extra kitchen scraps under the straw and compost in the ground. So there's a lot of different methods, but I definitely like it to be hot.
Right. Yeah. If it's hot and you know that it's hit a certain temperature for a certain amount of hours, the likelihood of anything being in there is almost zero, and you can feel better about using it or giving it to somebody else.
Right.
Well, why would someone hire a permaculture consultant versus do it yourself?
Well, I would say the best thing is to do it yourself if you have the skills and knowledge. a permaculture consultant, has studied rain barrels and energy systems, if you want a solar water pump. And so most of us with a few years experience have a lot of background that can advise people. A lot of our permaculture consultation is a 2-hour visit where we answer as many questions as possible. And then we might offer mentorship. And so maybe 1 in 10 people want a full design plan, but we really want to encourage people to be self-sufficient. That's a big part of permaculture.
Okay. So would it be something where with the permaculture experts or consultants where you kind of, when somebody's a permaculture consultant, do you provide just like the consulting part, or do you actually like help plant the plants? What's the extent of the consultants versus it being like
I tell you
like
what to do.
Yeah. How does that all work?
Well, my own business is a design build business, so we do a certain amount of installations a year. We do certain property management for people. So it really depends on the client's needs. This year we had a client that wanted a food forest in their suburban yard and a container gardenings on their deck. So we basically came in and helped them, help them. It was like a family event. So their family came and we planted lots of fruit trees and herbs in their yard. And then we built planters and we started the seeds with their children, mentoring their gardening. So we can do it all if needed.
Now, the question that came to my mind when you said in their front yard, obviously it's municipality varies, but was there any problem with the city saying this is okay, or was there permits in which you had to pull, or how did that work with putting that in the front yard?
Well, Pittsburgh's pretty liberal. There's lots of people have wildflowers and vegetables growing in their yards. So they actually allow chickens and even a sheep, or goat, if you have a reasonably enough lot. You can raise bees if you have 2,000 square feet. You can have a chicken, or up to 4 to 6 chickens if you have 1,000 square foot lot. So it's best to check your local rules and regulations, but in Pittsburgh they allow it. So encourage it, actually.
That's really good. You definitely, I know in some municipalities have to look out for that. Where if somebody were to hire a permaculture consultant, would they be able to know about like permits and things like that?
Yes. When we do a 2-week training in permaculture design, the last day or so we talk about invisible structures like legal issues and permits and concerns. Just you really do need to know those things.
Right. Well, Darrell, we greatly appreciate the time and the education you've offered Holly and myself. How can people find more out about you?
Well, my own website is threesisterspermaculture.com. I'm also involved in the Permaculture Institute of North America, which is PINA.IN. So they can learn about permaculture designers and teachers all over North America through PINA.IN.
Well, Darrell, thank you so much for the time and your wisdom that you've shared with us. We greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing gardening with your audience.
Absolutely.